Hello, and welcome to Mary Jane Markets. My name is Mo Rahim, and this is a podcast covering the developing news of the North American cannabis sector and a few of its operators, Curaleaf, Cresco Labs, Green Thumb Industries, and TrueLeaf. I have some sector and government policy updates for you today, and some acquisitions by Cresco and GTI in Massachusetts. Let's take a quick look at the market before diving into things. It was another red day with several MSOs down 3 to 4%, with little in the way of news to explain these movements. But moves like this size aren't uncommon in the sector. That's against the backdrop of a flat S&P and NASDAQ. Let me know if you guys find these check-ins useful. I don't much care about day-to-day stock prices, but my idea of incorporating this segment into the show was to put any sharp price movements into context with any fundamental news I would be discussing. Since those things are, or should be at least, correlated, usually the first indication that many of us have of something going on is a sharp movement in our portfolios. Alright, first up is an update on sales figures in the state of Illinois. On September 2nd, they released the adult use, that's recreational, sales for August. That number comes in at almost 122 million. 121.9, of which 81.2 million came from in-state residents and 40.6 came from out-of-state. As you can see here, comparing August to July, sales were down 5.8 million or 4.5%. When we talked about the July figures last month, I had mentioned that this was likely to happen. Back in July, there was a huge festival, Lollapalooza, that happens every year in Chicago, attracts a lot of in-state and out-of-state partiers. And as we've been talking about when looking at sales in other states, a downtick is what we're seeing nationally as people are returning to pre-pandemic life and shifting to buying more services instead of goods. But more importantly, if we look at the year-over-year trend, last August of 2020, sales were $64 million, which at the time seemed great. Every month was a record-breaking month, but point being, year-over-year sales have grown over 100% here, and I think that should be the takeaway, that demand is still very strong, and this is just adult use. There is also a large medicinal program in the state that reports usually later in the month. The other recent sales news in the sector has been Massachusetts' recreational program. At the end of August, they recorded a cumulative $2 billion in sales, this being reported last week by MJ Biz Daily and others. If we hop over to the Massachusetts Cannabis and Apologies, hunting for the right tab there. So this is the Massachusetts Cannabis Control website. They provide some really nice data here. I wish every state did this. So, as this nice chart on the bottom shows, this is $2 billion in sales since November 1st, 2018, when the state recreationalized. If we put this into context, and this is even more impressive, this top chart here shows the year-to-date sales being $845 million. So 845 of that 2 billion was sold in 2021. That's 42% of this cumulative headline coming from sales in just the last 8 months. And this isn't new consumers, right? Those consumers already exist out there. What we're seeing is a conversion from the illicit market to legal sales. And that's going to happen over time as legal supply builds out. You can't sell what you don't have. What I mean is on November 1st, 2018, there wasn't a perfect amount of supply available to fulfill all of the demand out there. Over the last few years, cannabis companies have been building and expanding their grow ops, opening dispensaries, bringing products to market, and converting those sales. In the long term, as that continues to happen, as prices come down, I think people are going to be truly shocked at just how big this market is. Next up, shifting our focus to government policy updates, we're going to be continuing our discussion on the delay in New York. As I mentioned in the last episode, the new governor, Kathy Hochul, called a special session of the New York Senate to address, among other things, the unstaffed agencies that are responsible for New York's cannabis industry. So the Senate convened on Wednesday, September 1st, and approved 2 people to head those agencies. The way that this is set up is a little confusing, and I just learned this myself. There are 2 agencies. There's the Office of Cannabis Management that's governed by the Cannabis Control Board. And the 2 people that were approved last week were the heads of those. I don't think we need to get super deep into this, but the remainder of the seats in both of those agencies are still unfilled. So there's 5 in one and 13 in another, and of those, only 2 have been filled now. So still a ways to go before the market in the state can make any progress. I just wanted to give you guys that update and clarification. You've probably seen headlines around this. I also checked the state Senate calendar, and I don't see another session like this one scheduled. This is the special session from September 1st. If I click on any other day, like today, there's nothing that looks like a state session. So we might have to wait until the Senate is back in its normal session in 2022. Let's shift over to company-specific news. In the headlines lately has been Cresco's closing of a Massachusetts acquisition. So this was previously announced back in March, I believe. Yeah, March of this year. They acquired a business called Cultivate, which operates in Massachusetts with a relatively small footprint. And Cresco already operates in the state somewhat. They had a tiny operation, and this was a deal to scale up faster. So they bought a company with assets in place rather than building their own from the ground up. So reviewing the transaction highlights, they're adding about 42,000 square feet of canopy, bringing their total in the state to approximately 64,000 square feet. So like I said, that's fairly small for a state like Massachusetts, which is the 11th largest market in the nation. They probably want to bring this up into the 100,000 plus range. And they do mention that the transaction includes space to further expand the cultivation capacity. I expect them to take advantage of that. Also in this deal, they're getting 3 operational dispensaries in the state, plus the one that they already had brings them up to 4. Now, there's a rule in the state of Massachusetts that a company is only allowed to have 3 rec dispensaries. So they're saying concurrently with the closing, one of their storefronts is transitioning over to medicinal only. And that's about all that this release covers. But if we go back to the announcement from March, this release has more information on the deal. So this release says that the combined operations will include 100,000 square feet of canopy. So that's probably after the expansion. They're going to end up with 3 adult use and 3 medical dispensaries, which is the maximum allowed. So the deal was for $90 million US dollars, plus an earnout of an additional $68 million, so potentially all in $158 million. It looks like they also closed it faster than they expected, so that's a good sign. I'm going to scroll down to the terms. So as we said, maximum consideration of up to $158 million. That implies a 2021 EV to EBITDA multiple of 4 to 4.5 times. So kind of a weird multiple to pick, but they're choosing to represent it that way because part of this earnout is based on certain EBITDA targets. Cresco's making some interesting deals. It's fun to wrap my head around these. All right, so the other interesting bits are that upon closing, they'll receive $15 million in cash and $75 million in shares, and that's subject to a lockup agreement. So that's $90 million of the $158 million. And they say the remaining $68 million is structured as an earnout, which is based on achieving target EBITDA thresholds in 2021. The lockup agreement is right here in this paragraph if you guys would like to pause and read that. And the only other thing I wanted to say about this deal was that the purchase price of $158 million implies that Cultivate was doing around $30 to $50 million in sales every year. That would be 3 to 5 times revenue, which is where other deals have closed at in the industry. Also muscling their way into Massachusetts is GTI through their acquisition of Greenstar Herbals, which they announced on September 1st. So with this, they're buying 2 operating adult use retail locations with a license for 1 more. And the release they put out is pretty short. No interesting terms to analyze. No other significant details except some generic commentary. And I'm hoping there's some more information in a filing, but they kept it short and sweet for this press release. So Massachusetts is turning out to be another battleground state, as it should be. As you can see from my market landscape spreadsheet, it is the 11th largest market in the country. Sorry, this is mislabeled. It is legal for medical and recreational use. Let me fix this. Sales last year were $625 million, and like we talked about today, 8 months into 2021, that's shot up to $845 million. They'll probably close out the year at 1.2, and that would be 100% increase year over year. So yeah, Massachusetts very much deserves to be a battleground state going forward. Alright, that is it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, turn that notification bell on. My goal is to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with concise and clear updates. If you have any feedback, please leave it below. I do take that seriously. Feedback will shape what this show will become. And word of mouth is really the only way I have of growing this show. So please share it out with anyone that's interested in investing in this space. If you want to contact me, my Twitter handle is @MJMarkets. I also have a Patreon page set up. That's patreon.com/MaryJaneMarkets. That is it for today, and I will see you on Friday. Thank you.